Hi, and welcome to the In the Cortex podcasts. We are your hosts,
I am Danielle Periconi.
and I'm Paloma Garcia, and we are the founders of In the Cortex, an online community with programs that show people the tools they need to change their lives through brain reorganization. No medication, just movement.
And when you get your brain out of survival mode and regulate your nervous system, you start to live in the fun, logical part of the brain, the cortex. Subscribe today and learn how to live your best in the cortex life. And now on to today's episode.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to our podcast. Today, we actually just started having a conversation about how we grew up and how a lot of people grew up and how a lot of the programming from our society is starting to dwindle and just shed away every single day now. And we notice it so much. And both of us working with kids and with other families, it's so interesting to see just the incredibly different perspectives that parents have nowadays in the way that they want to raise their kids, in the way that they talk to them, in the way that they encourage them to do different things. So that's what we were saying today is that when we were little, there was just so much weight on you have to go to school and you have to, that's been for however many years, right? It's not like just our parents. We have to go to school and then after school, you have to have 2 to 5 activities in the afternoon, and then you finally it's like you had to get the kids, like, tuckered out, and I remember my grandpa
Yeah.
saying that, like, "Oh, you gotta tucker them out, you gotta get them tuckered out," right? It's like all that you want is for the kids to, like, be tired so that they're not bothering you at night. That's kind
Mm,
of the way that I'm interpreting
yeah.
it, right? Where it's like, "Oh,
Yeah.
we want them to get everything out of their system, so at night, they're just chilling, they just wanna read a book and go to sleep," right? And of course, it was great to have all the activities we had, right? Not that I stuck to any of them, but it's great to have, tennis and ballet and whatever, swimming and whatever, but I I don't know if it was necessarily always aligned with what we were even interested in, you know?
Right. Right. I think I do a lot of that today where I'm looking at what my kids are doing and it's constantly like deprogramming of like, okay, society says
Yeah.
you have to do this with my kids. And then I'm working on this whole like fighting back of the system because I'm like, wait, is that what we need to do? Is that a part of how we're supposed to live? Because if you look at statistics, like we've never been more unhealthy, more sadder, more depressed, more filled with things that are not serving us well in our entire existence. And we just keep thinking the answer is add more, do more. And I know our program does tell you to do 20 minutes of brain work a day, but it's to do less, like in the big picture. So
Yes.
it's like you got to do this one thing to then be able to do less. So it seems counterintuitive, but it makes sense when you start regulating your nervous system. And I would say the one thing that's really resonating with me lately as I've been learning about human design and really understanding like when you're regulated, you also have a design that's so unique to you and
Mhm.
realizing that like my kids and me, we have different designs. And my daughter, she's a manifesting generator and she's not designed to like stick with one thing for long periods of time if she doesn't like it.
Yeah.
And I did push her into baseball. And she did tell me before she started that she didn't want to do
She
it.
wasn't into
And
it.
I was like, "No, it'll be good for you. It's about building character and grit and da 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 da, making friends." And she just like looked at me in her like very like stoic and very knowing face of just like,
She's very
I
wise.
already know. She's very wise. She's like, "I don't want to do it, but I will go ahead and appease you
I'll
and prove
humor
to you
you,
that it's
yeah.
not my yeah, that is not my jam." Anyway, so I remember seeing like the first practice and I was like, "Oh no, this is not gonna work for her." And I was just like, "Let's go." And like she would get up and she would kind of do it. And she had a great attitude. One practice she just like refused, but her blood sugar was really low on that one. But then I was just like, okay, I get it. You don't want to do it. And I just this weekend, I went and took her. I was like, "Do you want to at least get your picture taken? Because that's
Oh,
cute.
yeah.
And then you and Axel can take a picture together." And it was so interesting because speaking of programming, it was so fascinating. I saw a person I knew. She was like, "Oh, you ready to go for your pictures?" And I was like, "Yeah, we're just gonna take pictures today." She's like, "Oh, you're not gonna play the game?" And I was like, "No, it's not really her thing." And she was like, and then she decided to take it upon herself to get down to my daughter's eye level and was just like, when you start something, you must finish it. And I was like, "I'm sorry, what?" Like, that's your parenting. That's not mine. I just thought it was so interesting that she just, like, went into this conversation. I'm looking at it that she came from a space of wanting to support me because
Of
she didn't
course.
maybe she thought because society's expectations and the programming we have is that if you start it, you have to finish it, right? So many people say that. They're like, if they sign up for something, finish it no matter what and push yourself through. And then I was just like, "Yeah, well, I'm just trying to teach her how to, like, listen to her intuition, and, like, it's not that big of a deal if she doesn't wanna finish this one thing. Am I gonna let her get out of everything? No." But, like, baseball, I was like, "It's not needed." Anyways, Siggy, after that conversation for, like, 5 minutes, this woman went on, and we were just, like, sitting there, and I was just, like, looking at Siggy, and I'm like, "Yeah, I know, like, don't worry about it." And then after the conversation, I was like, whatever she said, like, that's not about us, right? Like, that's about her." And she's like, "Yeah, I know." And I was like, "Alright, cool, cool. So, you're good to not have to finish." And she's like, "Alright,
Yeah.
thanks."
Yeah.
But, like, my parents would have pushed me. My parents would have forced me to do everything.
Yeah. My parents were the opposite where they let me
Mm,
do not they
dictate it.
didn't make me stick to anything, and I
Mm,
think on one hand, it was good because I was able to do all these different things. I am thinking about, like, swimming, karate, ballet, tennis for sure. Tennis I stuck with a little bit longer,
okay.
and art, then they put me in, theater, musical theater, like, all the things that I wanted to do, they let me do it,
Yeah.
and but then sometimes I was a kid that had a disorganized brain, so any kind of movement was really hard for me. So anything
Mm,
like art and music and theater and stuff, that I was good to keep doing, but any movement thing, it was just hard for me, and so I didn't like it, and I would get really tired or really, like, whatever, overstimulated probably because my vestibular system couldn't handle that much movement, and so I didn't wanna keep going, and so they wouldn't always push me to keep going, so that's where I think it's really important to know your kid and know
yeah.
what their design is. Because 'cause I'm a projector, so my parents said no, they would've been like, "Actually, it's probably gonna be better for you to stick to this a little bit longer so you get really good at it." Because for me and my design, it's really important for me to get really, really, really good at certain things so that I can guide other people in doing them, right?
Yeah.
And again, this is not to blame anybody or shame anybody. There's
No.
definitely no way that they knew about human design, right?
No.
But I think it is a really cool tool, and when you couple it with this stuff, if I had been able to have an organized brain and a more regulated nervous system, then I would have been able to also go further in a lot of those things that were harder for me, and then movement in general would be easier for me now, that I'm
Yeah.
still fighting against my programming now at 36 years old,
Yeah.
even though have a much more organized brain. I'm not gonna say it's 100% because nobody has 100%, right? But
Mhm.
and I know how good it is for me, and I still sometimes I'm like, "Oh, but I do really don't wanna do it. I'm just so I'm just so
Well, that
lazy." And that's the programming, is that you're lazy. If you don't like
yeah.
to do movement, then you're automatically lazy, right? When it's just because 'cause I'm a projector, I need more rest than most people, that's it, just like you do, right? We need more naps, we need more rest, we don't have our own motor, right? But I
Yeah.
think that that's the stuff that we are now in the process of deprogramming and unprogramming for, and, like, I am so proud of these parents that come to the forest preschool and
Yeah.
let their kids get completely like, today I was telling you this
Yeah.
kid was he was a human dust ball,
Yeah.
like, he was so dirty, and the mom was
I
like
love it.
and she was like, "This is actually harder for me than it is for him. I'm glad I'm
Of
bringing him here." And I
course.
was like, "Yes, there you
Of
go.
course
Good
it
for you."
is.
And she's like, "Of course, he was living his best life. Are you kidding me? He was literally doing
Yeah.
snow angels in the dirt." And
Yeah.
she was like, "Okay, I'm really I think that's why I found this because I need to work on this. I need to be okay with him being
Ugh, I love that.
completely disgustingly dirty." And I was like, "Yes."
Yeah.
And that's what's so cool and about these people that are really wanting to find the other side of it, you know?
I love that. That's what it's really about because I think honestly, like when you break all of this down, it comes down to when a child is going through childhood and they are being programmed by their parents, the parents don't realize how much of their programs from their childhood are feeding this cycle. And I think that's what
Yeah.
we're trying to get to is breaking the cycle when it needs to be broken. Because I will agree with you, there was times when my parents did push me to do something, and it actually ended up helping my life out, and it gave me
Of
a really good
course.
life path. And, like, had I quit field hockey my freshman year in college and I dropped out of school, I think that my life trajectory would have looked so different. I don't think ITC would still be alive if I didn't have to learn that grit of pushing through something hard
Mm,
for sure, because owning a business, running a business, starting a business from the ground is not for the weak. It does require so much introspection and reflection and constant persistence to keep it going. So I do think that that comes from it. But all I wanted was a kid was maybe a little more conversation, maybe a little bit
yeah.
more like, how you doing, girl? And a little less emphasis on my performance,
Mm,
because that's where we just spent like what, a 2-hour session on Saturday breaking down our stuff around performance
mhm,
and value and worth, and
mhm.
realizing it stemmed from our parents' identity. Anyway, so that's what we're trying to get to, is like, when you're with your kids, or when you have kids, it's that moment to realize, like, when do I push them into something? When do I pull back? When do I look at like what their design is in human design to know what are they supposed to be doing? And then
Right.
how do I have the conversation? I think that's where we can guide this today, is how do we talk to our kids when we're in something that we don't necessarily love? And that's
Oh,
something that I have obviously had to learn how to do, because I'm with my kids who do a lot of things they don't want to do. They don't want to take tests. They don't want to do homework. They don't want to do certain things that they don't see the value in because they don't get it yet, right? They don't have that prefrontal cortex developed to see the big picture, to know where things are going to land,
which
because
isn't
they
gonna be
don't
developed
have.
until they're 26, by the way, so there's a long
Yeah.
time, yeah.
I really feel like we should shift adulthood to being at 26. Like, we shouldn't even
I
be driving
agree.
cars until we're
Why are we
26.
letting people act like they're adults when they're not? There's
Right.
18, you're still a teenager, right? 19, like, truly, I do think that that is something that I hope will shift at some point, because we're also giving really young people just so much responsibility, and their brains just not even finished
Ooh.
designing yet. I mean, developing yet, right? So it's really a lot. It's a lot of burden. It's like handing the keys of a car to a little 7-year-old. I mean, obviously it's not exactly the same, but where do you think that car's gonna end
Literally.
up? You know what I mean? Like, I'm just saying, I wish that there were
Yeah.
more years of mentorship, of guiding them, of holding them their hands and being like, "Here, I got you. Yes, it's time to maybe move on to doing your own business or working somewhere, or you don't have to be in school forever. You don't have to live with your parents forever." But having more of like an active mentorship be part of our society until you reach
Yeah.
those 26 years old, where you're like
Mhm.
talking to somebody about everything in your life, about your relationships. And this is why a long time ago, the way that our society was set up was intergenerational. We always had different generations, different ages to look up to and to learn from in the same classroom, but also in the same village. And also, these were the
Yes.
people that you were asking for advice, right? And this is where everything broke down, is when we started to break everybody down by age, decide these random standards of how, if you're this age, then you have to know this. If you're this age, you have to know this, right? And I'm going to test you
Yeah.
on it every 5 seconds. And
Right.
now the only people that I have to look up to are actually my same age. What?
Right? It's
Why would
so
I look
not
up to
it's
somebody who's exactly at the
nonsensical.
same point as I am, right? So I think that
No.
that would be an this is just a parentheses, but it would just be so amazing to have kids. I do think you're still a kid when you're in your early 20s.
Ugh,
I think kids,
100%.
you're literal babies,
Yeah.
um, they if they were able to, like, in society feel like there was still support for them, I think that everything would be so much easier for them, right? Instead of
Oh,
being
yeah.
like, "Okay, peace out, you're on your own,
You're supposed to know
you're
it.
done with college, bye, good luck." And we just have automatically the bar goes shoop up here. So now these are all the things you have to do and accomplish, and these are all the standards and expectations from you, right? And
Yeah.
I don't think that that's necessarily
Well,
fair for them, and I don't think it's helping them, because it's creating
no.
so much more resistance in a part of their lives when they're just not ready for it.
No, and I think I just talked about this today on a presentation, and someone was saying, it sounds like, the best thing to do is build the connection. And I was like, that's exactly what it is. It all comes back down to connection, healthy cortex regulated connection. And I think, I mean, I just came to me. I was just thinking like, okay, well, we know when school shifted, it was like the Industrial Revolution. And I know that, like, daylight savings time shifted because of war. We always were told it was because of, the farmers and the daylight, but I actually did a little deep dive because I was like, "Why do we still do it?" And it was because of
Yeah.
war. We wanted to save on fuel costs because they didn't have as much daylight, and they were in the midst of wars when it all started, and it went away, and then they brought it back, and
Mm.
who knows why. But then I was just thinking the same thing about why are we adults at 18? It's also about war, right? Being
Oh,
able to go off
right.
to war. And so I was like, it's not about actually being
Whoa.
18. It was like, and our life expectancy was so much shorter back in the
Yes,
day. So they
exactly.
probably had to find a time in the middle of when they were enough developed to go out and fight.
Right.
And honestly, too, I was just thinking about this. I mean, we're talking about programming because programming at the end of the day is everything. And if you think about like the Marines, I actually just saw a person wearing a shirt that said this on Saturday. It says, and it was a Marine Corps shirt. And I am not dogging the Marine Corps. Please hear that. I am just questioning and curious where this expression would come from. It said, pain is weakness leaving the body. And I was like, "Ah, that's an interesting
Wow.
way to think of it." And I was like, "I don't think of it like that at all." Like,
Nope.
that makes me think that we're tricking ourselves to think that
Yeah.
this pain is good for me because we grew up with the expression, "No pain, no gain," right?
Yeah, yeah,
And if
yeah,
you think
100%.
about how the military operates, it's a lot of psychological. It's a lot of, like, commands and chain of commands and who's the boss and listening to the boss, and there's so much rules and programming within the
Mhm.
military. I was actually just kind of thinking about that. I was like, wow, that's actually kind of crazy because we want our kids to learn how to tune into their intuition, know what works for them, know what doesn't work for
Yeah.
them. So they're not 36, 41 years old spending hours on a weekend
Yeah.
deprogramming themselves, like
Yeah.
unprogramming the things that aren't working, right?
Yeah.
Because we didn't have someone guiding us into here's a really good way of looking at this, or have you thought of it like this, or
Mhm.
what if you did push yourself here, and what do you think the outcome would be if you didn't? And it doesn't mean that that means the child gets to dictate and control it. It just means you pull them into the conversation so they start
Yes.
understanding the when to push, when not to push, when to stay, when not to stay. And I think that's something that so many of us stay too long, leave too soon, and in all aspects of life. And I
100%.
think that's the part that we really want to get to is how do we have the conversation so we can help honor like all the things. And
I
so this
love
is
that, and I
where,
think it's
yeah.
also yeah, well, it's also about helping them tune into their own intuition or not lose it, because when you're little, you still have that intuition very,
Yes.
very present, right? It
Yes.
hasn't been
Yes.
deprogrammed out of you yet, right? For the younger that you are, the more intuitive you are, just because
Hmm.
that's the way we operate, and
Yeah.
and also because you haven't developed that many other filters and that many other skills even to stop trusting it, right? So you maybe haven't even developed like a sense of time. So you just want to eat when you want to eat when you're hungry, right? That goes into like intuitive eating and stuff, right? So instead of having to do 3 meals a day, blah, 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 babies really just kind of eat when they get hungry. And then there's a lot of messaging that comes in from society about like you got to feed them this many times a day and blah, blah. That's a whole other thing. But
Yeah.
we all know our cycles, we know our rhythms, we know everything about our body when we're babies because that's what we know. That's what we know the
Right.
best, right? We're
So
learning all the
natural.
other stuff, but we know
Yeah.
this because that's what we have been
Oh.
with, at least for those 9 months that we were in
Mm,
the womb. That's what we had was that and our mom, and that's why the
mhm,
mom connection is so, so, so important. And so I think that that's truly what it's about is helping them connect with their own intuition, with their own way of interpreting things and seeing
mhm.
how do you think this is going to work and just helping them understand, like helping them not understand because they do understand, helping them put the words to the feelings that they're having and the
Yeah,
pulls that they're having or not having, right? And
yeah.
none of us know what the future is going to look like. And I think a lot of adults will do that. Oh no, but he's doing this thing. And
Mm,
now if he doesn't do this thing, then he's
then
never
it's
going to be able
gonna
to do
stop.
that thing. And then he's never going to be able to do that thing. And then when he's an adult,
Yeah,
this is going to happen. And it's like, okay,
that's a big leap.
the adult mind can take you really far, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, it really can go to some places. So, let's just help
Yeah,
them figure out what's right now because there's
yeah.
no way for us to know any of that in the future,
No,
right? And I think that this
No.
is where it's really important, like you said, to think about how to talk to them, and I'd love for you to give us some of those
Yeah.
strategies in a second, but I
Yeah.
think a lot of the time in this kind of conversation, people will start to talk about kids as being manipulative and being,
Ugh.
whatever. It's like,
Yeah.
it's a kid. So, are they manipulating you? Maybe, but they're not being manipulative. They're a
No.
child. So they're trying to
They're
they're
yeah.
always figuring out ways to understand how does my behavior and my actions and my words impact the world around me? How do people respond to it? How do people not respond to it? And so by putting a label on a
Right.
kid as young as whatever,
Yeah.
of their being manipulative, they're being like that, instead of being, "Oh, that's so interesting. I can see how they're perceiving what I said, and so now I'm curious to see how they're gonna respond to that," right?
Yeah.
And it is also normal for them to want to manipulate certain situations because that's what humans do, right? And so but I think that the word manipulate in itself is now seen as something inherently bad, right?
Right.
Or inherently, like, negative because of all the connotations that it has, naturally,
Oh,
right?
yeah. Yeah.
Of
Because
course.
after
So
as you get
yeah.
older, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and I think that's where it's really important, like, part of this whole conversation of today is also thinking about the language that we use with the kids, but also about the kids. It's so,
Yeah.
so, so important because we don't even notice. And we're like, "Oh, look at that. He's kinda manipulative, huh? Oh, she's so outgoing. Oh, he's really shy." And that's it.
Mhm.
You just like that, you're making that happen. You're making them become that, right? And it's
Right.
not like it's a bad thing to be shy or to be extroverted, right? But now you're putting this thing on this kid, this label on this kid that now it's gonna be seen as the one that always has to be extroverted, the one that always
Right.
has to be shy, the one that always has to be manipulating things. And that's
Yeah.
remember, guys, this isn't like something that the kids necessarily have to understand in order to live it out.
They can
This
feel
isn't
it. Yeah.
frequency. They feel
Yeah.
it. They know what it
Yeah.
is, and so they're living up to whatever frequency you're putting out because you're the adult in their life and you're the one that knows more, right?
100%. I think so many kids. Well, let's think about this. Like, you're being programmed when you're a kid from 0 to 8. I mean, really, for I would say your
Forever,
whole
yeah.
life, right?
Yeah.
I wouldn't. I just say that the time frame of 0 to 8 is just a lot more fast. It's a lot faster and more rapid. But I will say that you're watching the people who are caregiving you and taking care of you, and you're watching how they navigate life, and so you're doing what they do because that's what you literally are learning. So you're modeling behavior, right? And this always goes back to the conversation of why we say parents need to start with themselves first, because if you are going to be bringing kids through this experience, like you would really hope that you're regulated, because if you're
Yeah.
not, then they're going to learn dysregulation. That was 1000% my case. But yes, and I mean, I think this is where programming, it's just so insane because I catch myself like even falling back into those traps because that's just
Mhm.
what we do, right? We fall back into the traps of putting people into boxes because when you're going through something as a human, you're trying to understand why did that thing happen and trying to make sense of the story. And that way you can understand it so that way it can like stay in some
Mhm.
capacity, a tangible experience.
Mhm.
And and so it's really when you become really aware of it and you do you're fighting against a gigantic system that's trying to like get you to think differently. So when
Mhm.
we start to break out of it, it's going to take a lot of energy and effort to get through. But then once you're there, you're like you allow yourself to dip in and out of like being okay. Okay, shoot, I just got pulled back into that like, minutia of like the 3D stuff. And I want to be back out seeing the zoomed out version of it. And I do it all the time, and that's why I love these tools because I it's a way for me to get back into the place
Yeah.
I like being, the aligned place of, being able to see clearly and using my cortex versus getting caught up in the emotions
Uh-huh.
because we all do it.
Of
But with
course.
my kids, our conversations, for example, the one that happened with my daughter, and I do this like, it's so crazy to me. I literally will say something, and, the speed in which I catch myself now where I'm like, "Wow, that was a program. I'm so sorry. I can't believe I just said that to you."
Yeah.
So for my daughter, I was like, "You know what? I'm gonna go ahead and admit it. Like, baseball's not that fun for you. I can actually see it." And she's like, "Thank you."
I
And
know.
Axel's like, "Yeah, because she told you she didn't wanna play." And it's funny because he's coming from the angle of like, "Well, mom, if you have to go split your time between the both of us, then you're not there for me." So, of course, he's
Yeah,
gonna double down on her
of
not getting to
course,
play
yeah,
because he's like, "I want you to be at my games and practice."
yeah,
And she's also like, "I'm more having way more fun in my life, like, running around on the playground with my friends
yeah,
versus" and the amount she gets out of that versus going to a practice where I'll be honest with you, like, no shade to anyone who's a volunteer because I know it takes so much, but they're not that fun. They're not fun. Like, I would rather be on the playground too.
yeah,
And, anyways, baseball, we went into the conversation, and it always starts with me saying, "You know what? I'm sorry. I think this is actually blah, 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 what
yes,
needs to happen." And then there's times so when I'm able to do that and admit things to them and, like, get out of my head that I pushed you into something, and I'm more in the camp of, like, just go try it because T-ball
yeah,
last year was really not the vibe. Maybe rookies, the next level up will be more your vibe. Maybe it'll be more
yeah,
fun for you.
yeah,
And then she did it, and I was like, "Okay, she's not loving it." And I got myself into a little tricky position with that because I was the team mom. So I was like, "Uh-oh, we can't both walk away." But I was like, "Yes, I
sorry,
can. Yes, I literally
yeah,
can." So I was really nice, and I was just like, "Hey, my daughter's not into it. Happy to continue supporting you, but I'm not gonna do it anymore." And the coach was actually so sweet. He was like, "You were the best team mom I've ever seen in my years
yeah,
of coaching." And I was like, "Man, imagine if my daughter was into it. I'd be even better at it."
exactly, yeah,
But it's because I'm responsive. We're responsive. Do you know how many people don't respond? It actually is crazy. Anyways, I just love to respond to things. And I'm not even a manifesting generator. Like, why is that? It's an invitation, I guess.
I guess,
Um, so I just tell my kids, like, once I like put myself back onto the we're all a human level, and I let them
yeah,
know that I've made choices that maybe weren't the best, but I'm willing to admit it, then we can come back to, okay, she finally gets us and she'll honor this. So that way,
yes,
when it's time for them to actually do something, they know I really do have their best interest at play. Like in my
100%,
hands is like all I want is the best for them. And those are conversations I have incessantly with my kids. And I tell them why we have
exactly,
to do certain things. I think that's the element
yeah.
parents forget sometimes
I
where
think
you're
that's a
just like,
huge
yeah,
thing because we assume again, we assume that they're not gonna get it, and they don't need
yeah,
to know why. Why wouldn't
mhm,
they need to know why? Like, if this isn't a decision that's affecting their lives, all
tell
you got
them.
maybe have to tell them all the exact specific details and all the
No.
ins and outs, because that would, like,
Yeah.
be a little too much, but tell them the real reasons that things are happening and the real reasons behind certain decisions, certain changes, certain whatever, and that's one of the biggest things that I think that you and a lot of the moms that are really on this kind of frequency do,
Yeah. Yeah.
is treat your kid like an adult. You know, there's
Mhm.
no obviously not in every single way, but in the way that
Right.
you communicate with them, in the way that you interact with them. And this is something that I really, really, really learned in my time working with kids with
Mhm.
autism is like you always assume that they 100% understand everything single thing that you're going to say.
Yeah.
You're never gonna talk about them in front of them, you're never gonna talk to them
No.
like they're li and I don't even
Um,
to
drives me
anybody,
crazy.
I don't like talking to kids like, "Hello, little boy,
Mhm.
how are
No.
you?" Like,
No.
that's just not my thing,
No.
and it's just really not my thing, but also, at all ages, you presume competence, and you presume
Yes.
understanding, and you presume also curiosity. Kids are so curious about that kind of
They're so
stuff, because
curious.
it's also
Yes.
like, "Ooh, that's like what does that even mean?" And then they
Yeah.
get to learn new words, and they get to learn new things, and remember, every single instant is a learning experience for kids.
Yes.
Every single
Amen.
one. That's why we go back to this whole thing of, like, letting the kids in your school and my school just run around and let them
Yeah.
get experiences from that, right? Because
Yeah.
they're not learning from or they
The
are, but
textbook.
not in the most efficient way from sitting
Mhm.
down and listening to the same lecture and looking at the board and
Mhm.
being told what to know, right? They learn so many things organically from just running around, making mistakes, saying, "Oh, that was a mistake. I'm not gonna do that again." Great. That's a learning
Mhm.
lesson, right? That's a
Yeah.
learning moment, I should say, not a learning lesson. But that's where I think a lot of us, in society get stuck, right?
Yeah. And I My experience of what I've been doing in my personal life of just how I work through things is open. I don't hide in my room ever about like
Mm.
I don't hide my tears, I don't hide my anger, I don't hide any emotions. And while I'm in it, I let them know what's happening
Yes.
because they'll get this look on their face where they're like, "Mom, are you okay?" And I'm like, "I'm okay. I'm crying because I'm sad, but I'm
Yeah.
okay."
And I'm
And it's
letting this
good
out.
to be okay, or it's good to cry. It's good to
Yes.
and or I'm like and I'll tell them all the time, I'm like, "I'm really frustrated right now because I have shared with you guys countless times how this needs to happen, and it happens because of this, and this."
Yes.
And I was like, "So I understand you need multiple reminders, but I really need you to start listening and stepping into it." But it's not yelling. And I
No.
think this is where I think parents and caregivers think that if I, like, drill it into them by yelling at them, it's gonna click
Yeah.
better, but
Yeah.
that's fear. They're instilling fear, right?
Totally.
And when parents threaten to spank their kids, I'm sorry, I am going to tell you, I am very against any corporal punishment at home. It doesn't make sense. If you're an adult male and you hit a woman when you're an adult, you have bad things happen to you. So why are
Yeah.
we showing adult men hitting kids or adult women hitting kids? It doesn't make sense. It's
No.
literally the whole spanking thing to me. That's a hill I'll die on. It is
Yeah.
not okay. It literally dysregulates the nervous system.
Yeah.
Um, and we could totally pull science on that one and show you why it does if you need to understand like the cortisol and the adrenaline spiking
Mhm.
and then it turns into kids wanting to hide and fear you because you're not being transparent with your feelings. I once was with somebody who told me, sorry, this is a little sidebar because I think it's really interesting when people try to justify it. They said, "I never spanked when I was emotional." And I was like, "Then why did you do it?" "Well, I wanted to teach them a lesson." "How does that teach someone a lesson?"
That's
And then they're
interesting.
like, I was like, "'Cause they fear you?" And they're like, "Oh, I guess so. I guess I never, like, peeled it down to that layer." I was like, "Yeah, because
Right.
think about it. That's the only time that you're gonna stop a behavior if you're scared if someone's gonna do it, but then you're not stopping it for the reason of,
When
like,
you're not
really truly
exactly.
stopping it. You're just
Well, because 'cause you're not
suppressing it."
fully getting why it needs to change,
Right.
right? And
Exactly.
so that's where and that's where I think a lot of parenting gets confused with authority, with like, "Oh, I'm the authority in your life." No, you definitely are there to set boundaries, you're there to help them understand the boundaries, you're there to help them
Mhm.
understand what's right and what's not okay to ever do, but you're not their authority, you're not their
No.
boss. You're their
Mm-mm.
you're their you're their everything. You're their
Right.
caretaker. You're the person that's
Yes.
here to hold them,
Yes.
right? Like what we were saying the other day, I don't know what we were saying about, like, holding them until they're ready to
Yes.
fly away,
Yes.
right? Like,
Instead
you're
of holding
holding
space.
them, not pushing them down.
Mhm.
You're meant to
Mhm.
be underneath them being like, "Here,
Mhm.
I got you. I got you. Go fly. I got you. Whenever you
Yeah.
fall, I'm right here." You're not meant to be up here above
Right.
them, putting the lid down, being like, "Don't do that. Don't do that either. Don't do that either." But that's the way that our society works. So that's why we think that that's the way parenting should work, right? And there's so many strong opinions out there on both sides. We are very clearly on one side.
Yeah.
And there's so many ways that you can justify either one. And this is not about justifying it. This is about
No.
thinking about how the system is
Mhm.
designed to operate and how our systems are meant to operate. And Greer Kirschenbaum has so much science about this. And we've actually wanted to contact her to
Yeah.
do like some work on like older kids and how this works
Yeah.
for older kids. But she has all this science on how nurture shapes every single thing about the baby's brain in those first kids' brain in the first 3 years of life. And
Yeah.
it is a game changer coming from
Right.
nurture rather than coming from this,
Yes.
right? From
Yeah.
authority.
Right. And I think like when your kids become teenagers, if they have a good nurtured connection and it's a secure, attached connection, there's going to be less of the lying and the hiding and the wanting to
Yeah.
like sneak around, right? And I know this because I've actually worked with quite a few teenagers and they're just like, yeah, my parents just don't understand. And I was like, here's what happens. Teenagers literally, because we were all one, at one point, we literally are not able to see that our parent was ever a teenager
No,
because the
exactly.
biology in our brain is going through this massive pruning where it's literally designed to only know itself and like go into the world and not be fearful anymore. So then you
Yes.
just think you're invincible. And this is why teenagers do some really risky behavior. It's because
Yep.
that's what they were supposed to do back in the day, leave the tribe, go find another tribe, whatever, and then, see what happens when that happens, go be on your own for a little bit. And and I obviously just kind of really blanket statement and summarize that really quickly. And there's obviously a lot more nuance and stuff going on within that. But generally speaking, that's what our brains are doing as we're teenagers. And so parents think it's like a direct dig against them, like, oh, they don't
Yes.
respect me. And I'm like, that's not what's happening, though. It's not about respect or not respect. It's that their design biology is supposed to be seeing if they can handle the world and see what happens when I step out and do this big risky thing. And obviously, our kids aren't living in the same world that we used to as hunters and, gatherers back in the day. We're living different lives. Now we have cars to drive. And that's why we should move the driving age back a bit because
Yeah.
I really don't think a 16-year-old is making. I
No.
didn't make very good choices at 16. I didn't know better
Mm-mm.
because I thought I was invincible. So
Yeah.
it really is a risk to put these teenagers on the road driving. I will say that. But the whole point of this is we need to have a really secure attachment to our kids, and that starts by having conversations, letting them in so they can understand what's happening in our day-to-day life. And I do this with
Mhm.
my kids all the time. I put podcasts on that I'm listening to. I've even had my daughter when she was 6 years old, like newly 6 years old, she called me out. She was like, "Don't you remember what David said on his podcast? You're supposed to blah, blah, blah." I can't remember what the thing was, but she was able to listen to a podcast like from a month ago and pull it into the context of my life
Yes.
and how we were handling things. And then the most important piece was, I was like, "You're right. Thank you for checking me." And
Mm.
see, that's what takes away that authority thing because 'cause I'm not trying to
Yeah.
paint this picture because I think that's what you and I grew up with. Once you become
Yes.
adult, you're gonna know everything, and there's no
Yeah.
problems. I just thought every adult had it together because my
Yeah.
parents hid, like, all the things, and then once I got older, I was like, "Oh my gosh, everyone's literally struggling, and, like, we're all still figuring it
Everybody's still
out."
figuring it out. Well, I remember I
Yeah.
talked to my mom one time and I was like, I think I was like, I just turned 30 or something. And she's like, "What does it feel to be 30?" And I was like, "I don't feel like an adult. Like I'm
Mhm.
never gonna feel like an adult. I don't think I'm ever gonna feel like an adult."
Yeah.
She's like, "Baby, do you think I feel like an adult?" And I was like,
Mm.
"Don't you?" And was like, I don't know, in her early 60s. And she's like,
Yeah.
"No, I don't feel like an
Yeah.
adult either." I was like, "Are you serious?" She's like, "No, nobody ever officially feels like an adult.
No.
It's this ideal that we're all kind of being like, "Oh, one day, but when I'm
Mm.
80, then I'll feel like an adult." It's like, no, probably not either, right? Because we have this idea of being an adult. That's a whole other podcast, right? It's like it's a
What does it
thing. It's like this
mean?
structure and this whatever. It's this ideal that we're all striving for to a certain extent that I don't know if we're ever going to reach, right? Slash, we
That's
probably won't,
actually
most of us.
so that's actually so funny because I actually feel like I'm actually an adult right now because I feel super regulated. I feel like I've got a good situation with like me and my kids going on. I feel like, I'm prepared and knowing that things aren't going to go my way. I think that's a really big piece of knowing that there's so much uncertainty in life and I'm never going to just get to a point where like poof everything is certain and perfect. And I think we're all wanting that so
That's,
desperately. And
yeah.
that's what I'm teaching my kids right now is there's no such thing as like an outside certainty. It's all inside. When you have
Yes,
certainty
exactly.
on your inside and you're secure inside, anything can happen around you and you're good to keep
And
figuring out.
again, the way to feel that is by regulating your nervous system. If you're always in fight or flight, certainty, security in yourself, all this stuff is just not going to
Yeah.
happen, right? And we always
100%.
say use whatever method you like, but you have to start with the nervous system. If you use ours, that's the really
Awesome.
the one that's actually getting to the root where you won't need the other ones as much. But do whatever you want to do.
Yeah.
Always start with your nervous system because truly that's what is the key to everything else. It really is. And that's why so many more people are talking about it now, right? We finally are,
Yeah.
as a society, are realizing like, oh, wow, we were really messing with our own nervous systems without knowing for so many years and just pushing through all these things that we maybe are not so great for us.
Right. And I do think the message right now in today's world is that we have that awareness. And then most people are telling you to take a deep breath. Most people are telling you to do some sort of a therapy that you have to outsource out or take something.
Yeah.
And what we're trying to share with you is that you can do this on your own. We have a guided system that walks you through it. It helps you become your own expert. And really, that's where we were always supposed to be, but we got really off track a long time ago with, again, where did all these things come from? The pushing of humanity into like the evolution. If you really look at us though, as like a human species, we haven't really evolved that much. Like, look at the Romans to
That's
today. It's like not that big of a jump.
That's the whole thing.
Yeah.
That's the
So
whole thing. Like, can we stop thinking that we're so much better and so evolved
we're
and so
not.
above everybody? Our brain is the same as 30,000 years ago, guys. 30,000 years ago, or
That's
40,000, depending on which archaeologist you're talking to. Okay. So it's actually a long time. Like, we have to stop thinking that we're like these like superhuman. Oh, no, we're so much more
no.
evolved now. Back then, they didn't know anything. Maybe they knew more. Just saying.
I actually think
Maybe they
the
knew
fact
more.
that we're still quoting these philosophers from hundreds of years ago and
We
they're
love
still
them.
relevant today, and they didn't even have Instagram.
Well, the fact that
It's
we are, like,
like yeah,
rediscovering now things that
right.
actually all these ancient traditions
Yeah.
have known for
Right.
ever, like, the fact that there's
Right.
now science to show things about Ayurveda that are amazing, about Chinese medicine and acupuncture and all of these things, it's like, "Oh,
We had that
okay,
the whole
that'll all
time.
do it." It's like, "Come on,
Yeah.
are you serious?" Right? But that's and again,
Yes.
I do think as a society, we're getting to a point where we're not needing that anymore as
You're
much. People
right.
are trusting much more, being like, "You know what? There might not be that much sorry, there might not be that much scientific proof for that thing, but whatever, I'm just gonna do it because
If
it
it
feels
works.
right for me,
Mm.
right? And if
Yes.
it works, and that's what we always
Yes.
say. No, we don't have the brain scans. If you need the brain scans, this is not the program for you because we don't have the
Right.
specific brain scans of which part of your brain is exactly changing every single time you do the movements. What we do have is hundreds of testimonials and people who have shown us time and time again that lives change. Everything gets so much easier. And that's why we're here. I'm not screaming at you, I promise. This is why we are talking about this because it
Yes.
is truly a game changer, a life changer. And that's it.
Yeah, we're
Thank
just
you for being
asking.
here.
Yeah, thank you. Mic drop. And
Yeah.
honestly, like here's how I feel like this could end so you can kind of have something to land on. If you're First of all, if you're in a conversation with your child and all of a sudden you're getting triggered and you're feeling activation and you're feeling like you need to lay down the hammer, great chance to go look at why. That's a really big, you know, the alarm is being sounded that there's something in you that's being activated, that's your first step. Go look at that. If you're feeling your kids are disrespecting you, if you feel like your kids are being manipulative and sneaky with you, again, go look at why you think that's happening because that's coming
Mhm.
back to you and whatever programs you've been running from. And that's where we say start with you. Go dig deep into that and really shift it. Where did it come from? And then decide how you want it to show up instead. And then you can bring your kids on board with you and say, hey, let's go do some fun movements together.
Mm.
And also, just like what Paloma just said, if you're someone who's like, I don't know if I want to do this yet because I don't have enough science to prove it, that's a self-sabotage. That's already your way of like flight, of getting out of something. And we're not trying to yell at you and like demand that you do this program. We are just in the space of like, we know it will benefit everyone. And in on that note, we've constantly started shifting our messaging and how we're talking to everybody. Obviously, this one feels a little intense right now. I'm not gonna lie. We're coming through pretty hot with like join our program. But we have a 28-day starter experience for our brain reorganization program happening on April 6th. And this is where Paloma and I are going live with you 3 o'clock every Monday at 3 p.m. PST every Monday for 4 Mondays. And we're going to guide you through each module. So that way it's like You're not just out there doing it by yourself and just like trying to figure it out. We're literally getting on the call. We're showing you how to do the movements. Even though our program has tons of videos on it, we're going to like really help you step through that big leap of like getting started on it. And it's going to be amazing because we're going to have a community joining you. We're going to be here live helping you through all the Q&A. Members that have already been in our program are going to come and join it. It's a great chance for you to take all this energy that's starting to happen and shifting and for you to direct it and channel it into something of like actual tangible steps forward to transform your life. And we're just excited because it's transformed our lives, and we just want to share this with more people and hope more people can feel what we get to feel because it's
Indeed.
liberating.
Yes.
So send us an email if you've got questions. I'll drop in the show notes here a link to sign up,
Yes.
and maybe I'll add a little promo link to it. I don't think I've done that on
Yeah,
the
let's give them a
podcast one.
promo. It's a
So
good promo for listeners.
yeah, I'll give you a promo
Yeah.
for our 28-day starter, and, that way there's less resistance to get you through because our program right now is $67 a month for a year. You pay that, and then you have lifetime access. So we'll give you a little maybe like a little $10, $20. I don't know. We'll
Yeah,
figure
let's do
that
it.
out. It'll be
Let's
worth
do
it.
it.
It'll be worth it. Okay. We
Great.
just decided it. All right.
Yes.
And also at the very end of this, we welcome you to have more conversations with your kids. Just talk about it with them. If you have questions of what that looks like and you need support, we always offer one on one coaching. And we're always here to answer questions. Book a 15-minute call. We'll also be able to talk to you there. Have a great rest of your day.
Peace out.
Bye.